Okay, let's start off with some good news. Saints fans, your team is on a bye this weekend and they can't hurt you. Bad news is they started that bye in the fourth quarter of the Monday night game. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Actually didn't do too bad last week. Grossi, and today we are going to be predicting every single game in week 14 of the NFL. Folks, we're coming down to the wire. It's December football, and after a bunch of really great matchups in week 13, we have our final bye week of the season, and then after that, we got 16 games every single weekend, and we're going to start getting Saturday football soon enough. This is the time where playoff contenders emerge and hold on to it, and then whatever the hell the Washington Commanders are doing, they exist, but they're not losing. Now, last week I went 11-3, a pretty solid record. Here are the games that I got wrong, bringing me to 120-73 on the season. That tie didn't count as a win or loss, so I'll take it. Still in the hunt for the elusive perfect record, and this week the Packers are on a bye week, so no homerism whatsoever, though I picked the Vikings to lose every single week. And so with that being said, let's start off with another barn burner of a primetime game on Thursday Night Football. You got the Vegas Raiders taking on the LA Rams. The Raiders find themselves on a bit of a win streak, which is a surprise to everyone. No, seriously, what are they doing? I'll tell you what they're doing. They're running the ball with Josh Jacobs effectively. Davante Adams having a phenomenal game as well against the Chargers, and good God, Chargers defense is basically non-existent. So the Raiders have gone from being at the bottom of the division to, just watching the Broncos continue to fall down there, and they're actually rising, and there's talks of maybe even playoff hopes here. Ever since Carr decided to weep some tears, they've won, so maybe that's the magic formula there. Meanwhile, the Rams, they actually put up points on offense, so that was nice, but their defense absolutely collapsing against the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf just destroying Jalen Ramsey in that game, and the Seahawks didn't look good either. The Rams, it's rough out there. Matthew Stafford not going to return for the rest of the season. He's got health issues. Hopefully he's going to be able to play again. There's talks about him being forced into retirement, but we're not going to talk about that just yet until we find out all the information. Baker Mayfield just signed to the Rams, so maybe he can breathe some life into that locker room. I wish him the best, but considering their offensive line, injuries, and now defense, he may have wanted to continue riding the bench in Carolina. But yeah, the Rams are a broken football team. They are competing for one of the worst Super Bowl hangovers of all time. Just must have been all that whiskey. But because of that, I'm going to pick the Raiders to continue their win streak. I think running the football is going to be the way they're going to beat the Rams. On top of that, if they can get Davante Adams involved again, Carr has been playing pretty darn good, and Josh McDaniels will continue to look like a good coach. What is going on? Following that, you have an AFC East battle between the New York Jets and the new number 1 overall seed in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills. The Jets, well, it's a story of Mike White. It happened last season in which, oh my God, he's so good, and then came crashing down to earth. He threw 4 interceptions against the Bills last season. And in this season, he saved the Jets the first week and then threw 2 interceptions the second week, though you also had receivers dropping touchdown passes. The Jets losing a heartbreaker to the Minnesota Vikings. Why couldn't you do just one thing and defeat the purple incarnation of Satan? Just saying. Meanwhile, the Bills, they had themselves quite the week. Not only did they decimate the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football, but the Dolphins lost, the Jets lost, and the Chiefs lost, and they found themselves number 1. Unfortunately for the Bills, McDermott announced that Von Miller did have surgery yesterday and ended up repairing his ACL, thus ending his season. And while I do think the defense can still do fine in his absence, Von Miller will definitely be missed. The Bills were kind of going through these growing pains. They didn't look so good. They were losing some games. They had a tough time with the Lions, but they absolutely handled their business this past Thursday. And now they're going up against another AFC East opponent. They're 1-2 in the division. The Jets already have a win over the Bills. Will they be able to sweep them? I don't think so. Mike White is just going to be too inconsistent for me, and while he does show flashes, I don't think he's the permanent solution there in New York. So because of that, I think the Bills will continue to roll. We'll see how Josh Allen performs against this defense this time, but I imagine the Bills will win. Following that, you got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, an AFC North showdown in a division that is wide open right now. Any one of these teams can win. Just a lot of people are hoping it's not the Browns. The Cleveland Browns, you saw the return of Deshaun Watson, who absolutely sucked, just giving Texans fans a bit of a reprieve. Instead of booing their own team, just booing their old QB. Deshaun Watson did not play well, but the Browns were able to pull away a win from the Texans. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals, those kitties are going meow. They're on a 4-game win streak, just defeating the former number 1 overall seed in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs. Jamar Chase returning last week, playing well. And again, they still don't have Joe Mixon. We'll see if Mixon's able to return against the Browns here. I don't really trust Joe Woods. I still think that Deshaun Watson is likely to have some growing pains here because the Bengals defense has been sneaky good these past few weeks. And so because of that, I say the kitty will continue to meow, perhaps even roar, and the Bengals will win. Then you got a battle in Texas. You got the Houston Texans taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Do I really need to say much about this game? The Texans are tanking. They've won 1 game. Allen is terrible. The Cowboys committed homicide on Sunday Night Football against the Colts.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too.
They scored over 30 points in the fourth quarter. I think that's all I need to say. Cowboys win. Then you have an NFC North showdown between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. The Vikings, we just talked about, they had a win over the Jets. They started off strong, then allowed the Jets to crawl back into that game, just continuing their stressful Sundays, which is basically every single week for them. Meanwhile, the Lions not going gently into that good night, defeating the Jaguars, and oh boy, they killed him. Trevor Lawrence was injured in that game, but he wound up coming back. But that offense was firing on all cylinders. Jamal Williams, love you, J Swag Daddy, continued to dominate the league, has 14 touchdowns on the year, and Amon-Ra St. Brown continued to show why he's so special. The Lions are actually favored in this game, and I think it's going to be a good one. At Ford Field, it's going to be rocking. The Vikings are trying to put a bow on the NFC North, clinching the division. They had an opportunity to last week, but the Lions won, and this should be a fun game. This game last year came down to the wire where the Lions were able to get their first win of the season, but this is a very different Lions team. However, the Vikings, there's some voodoo magic going on, and I don't know what it is. I'm going to get to the bottom of it, but unfortunately, I think the Vikings are going to win this game. I want the Lions to win with all my heart. I'm hoping that this is a reverse psychology curse, but the Vikings, I can't explain it anymore. They just win, and it makes me sad. Go get them, kitties. Then an AFC South showdown between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Both these teams getting their ass kicked last week. The Jaguars, we just talked about, losing to the Lions, and the Titans getting beat up by their former wide receiver, A.J. Brown, and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Titans were so embarrassed after the game, they just fired their GM, even though he traded A.J. Brown way back in April and was given an extension this past February. Jalen Hurts threw 380 yards on the Tennessee Titans. Their defense struggled. Derrick Henry really couldn't get anything going for the second week in a row, and that spelled trouble. Meanwhile, the Jaguars, as we just talked about, they got dominated in that game, and thankfully Trevor Lawrence isn't injured, but good God, that defense is bad. This game honestly could be a flip of the coin. I'm going to pick the Titans to win because they are still going to be favorites to win the division. And even though the AFC South got the crap slapped out of them, somebody's got to win this godforsaken division. And at least you're not the NFC South. So the Titans should be able to get the win. I imagine with this bad defense of the Jaguars, Derrick Henry will be able to regain his footing a bit. So the Titans should win. Then continuing the divisional matchups, you got the Eagles taking on the Giants. The Eagles, as we just talked about, had a big win last week, mostly because of Jalen Hurts, and they didn't even need to run the ball well. They ran the ball and absolutely killed the Packers the week prior, and now they threw all over their opponent. Meanwhile, the Giants, they tied with the Commanders, and I gotta give some props to the Giants. They're out there playing with a practice squad. They got a ton of injuries, and they're still fighting hard. I don't think the rest of the schedule is going to be kind to the Giants, though, because they just have too many injuries. And while Brian Dable has been a very good coach, I think it's just going to be too tough to overcome. I think the Eagles are just the better football team right now. Right now, they are the #1 overall team in the NFL, and I think that'll continue on Sunday as the Eagles beat the Giants. Following that, you have another AFC North showdown between the Ravens and the Steelers. This actually could be a really interesting game. The Ravens coming away with a last-second win against the Denver Broncos, which, again, Ravens, your offense is terrible. Lamar Jackson got hurt. He's going to be day by day. Tyler Huntley stepping in, wound up getting them the win, but yeah, your offense is a mess right now. Meanwhile, the Steelers, they were able to pull off a win against the Atlanta Falcons, where their punter was basically the player of the game. And I think that this is going to be a showdown. The Ravens, I imagine, won't be playing Lamar Jackson to try and save him. They're leading the division, but I don't know how much longer they're going to hold on to it. The Steelers' defense has been playing pretty well. Kenny Pickett, solid, but the run game of the Steelers has gotten much better. They're playing gritty football right now. Mike Tomlin refuses to have a losing record. And so I'm actually going to pick the Steelers to beat the Ravens here. I think this defense will be too much for an already struggling Ravens offense. And maybe Steelers going Super Bowl. Then continuing with the rivalries, you got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Denver Broncos. Listen, there's not a lot of justice in this world, but praise be, this game got flexed out of Sunday Night Football. The Chiefs, a devastating loss against the Cincinnati Bengals, though it's not the end of their season. Uncharacteristic football, they made mistakes. Travis Kelce fumbled. Mahomes was kept in check. But listen, they're a balanced football team. They're going to bounce back, and against an opponent that they should absolutely dominate, and that is the Denver Broncos. No matter what you think, folks, if you think your offense is bad, look at the Broncos and you'll find worse. And to best describe the Broncos, here's Saul Goodman.
Let's start with some tough love, all right? Ready for this? Here goes. You two suck.
Everything is awful for the Broncos. The defense plays solid, but at some point, they are just going to have to give up because they're on the field all the time. Russell Wilson is bad. They got no O-line. They got no run game. Receivers aren't doing anything. It's pretty much a wash for Denver, who is going to finish last in the division. The Chiefs, they've been beating the crap out of Denver for quite some time. I think that continues on Sunday. So Chiefs get the W. Following that, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Buccaneers coming off a big Monday night win where they didn't do crap. They had an amazing first drive that ended in 3 that took up more than half of the first quarter. And then they didn't do anything until the fourth quarter. They just allowed the Saints to shoot themselves in the foot, and oh, they did. JB not getting any gumbo this past week, and the Buccaneers able to lead 2 drives that got them the W in just embarrassing fashion. Because listen, the NFC South is garbage. Meanwhile, talking about other garbage, the NFC West, the 49ers still atop the division. A big win over the Miami Dolphins. Their defense absolutely dominated them. Jimmy G was carted off in the beginning of the game in what we thought was a broken ankle. However, latest news shows that he has a chance to actually return for the playoffs since he shouldn't need surgery. And Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant himself, stepping in, playing pretty darn well, and getting them the win. And the 49ers, again, they're an odd football team. They have so much talent on the defense. They have so much talent on the offense. It's just their quarterback that holds them back, and I think it's going to continue to hold them back. However, they're on a 5-game win streak, and they're going up against the Buccaneers, who, again, have not looked great. I think the defense of the 49ers should really keep Tom Brady in check. I think this will be a low-scoring game, but ultimately, I think the 49ers will win. just as long as they don't pull a Saints. Then you have the Carolina Panthers taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Panthers said bye-bye to Baker Mayfield as they were resting on their bye week. And honestly, they have a shot to win the division. Meanwhile, for the Seahawks, they got the win against the Rams, but oh boy, it was an ugly game. That defense is just not good. Every running back for the Seattle Seahawks getting injured, also not great. Geno Smith, though, played pretty good except for that one interception. And the Seahawks, listen, I think they should be able to win this game. They still have a shot to win the NFC West. It just depends on what the 49ers are going to do, and they have a big showdown coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win here. The Panthers should play pretty good defense, but I don't think they're going to have the offense to really put up a ton of points against a bad Seattle defense. And so Geno Smith will probably have himself a good game, and the Seahawks win. Then you have a couple of teams on Sunday Night Football who had some pretty rough losses. You got the Miami Dolphins taking on Justin Herbert and the Chargers. The Dolphins, we talked about this. Yeah, did not run the ball at all against the 49ers, and they paid for it. Had some bad turnovers, Tua struggled, and the defense just did not play well. Meanwhile, the Chargers, yeah, the line of the Chargers, not good. That defense, after they spent all that money in capital, it ain't good. That run defense, especially bad. I imagine Mike McDaniel is not going to make the same mistake, and you're going to see a heavy dose of guys like Jeff Wilson on Sunday night. This should be a fun game. It's Tua versus Herbert. Both of these teams' offenses can put up a lot of points. However, I think the Dolphins are going to rebound in a big way. Chargers are kind of just like in a weird place right now. They got a lot of injuries, and they're dealing with lots of issues. So I think the Dolphins are going to be able to get the win on Sunday night and get that much closer to the playoffs. And finally, on Monday night, you got the New England Patriots taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals on a bye last week, so they didn't have to worry about anything. Kyler Murray getting some extra Call of Duty time. Meanwhile, the Patriots suffering a loss yet again in prime time, this time against the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots offense showed some flashes against the Vikings, and then were completely destroyed by the Bills. Their defense is solid, though they allowed the Bills to just kind of do whatever they wanted to them. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, they're another weird football team. Cliff Kingsbury needs to get fired. Kyler Murray can make some great plays. DeAndre Hopkins is good. Connor is good at times. And again, this is a team that can put up points. Are they going to? From what I've seen, there's a good shot that they do. I think this is going to be an ugly football game. You have a bad Patriots offense going against a bad Cardinals defense, and you have a good Cardinals offense going up against a good Patriots defense. So who the hell knows what's going to happen in this game? This honestly is a wild card, though I don't think either of these teams are going to make the wild card. I'm going to pick the Cardinals to win just because I think they have a more explosive offense than the Patriots, and the defense hasn't looked as good as it has been in the past couple of weeks. So Cardinals get the W. But who knows? Maybe the Cardinals will still come up short. Yes, that's a short joke. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you think all of these games are going to shake out in Week 14? Let me know. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go. We can't lose this week.